Number 888-318-7884. Have you ever wondered, is it possible to reconcile, or is there a right way and a wrong way to reconcile Genesis, the book of Genesis, with modern evolutionary thinking? Are they irreconcilable? What does science have to say about that? What does theology have to say about that? We will get all into all of that today with our guest this hour, Dr. Stacy Trasancos. And Dr. Trasancos is the author of Particles of Faith, a much kind of, or I should say it this way, a very well-reviewed book about the relationship between science and religion, science and the Christian faith in particular. And she also wrote a book called Science Was Born of Christianity, the teaching of Father Stanley Jaki. And she has a bachelor's degree in science from East Texas State University, a doctorate in chemistry from Penn State University, and a master's degree in dogmatic theology from Holy Apostles College and Seminary. She's an adjunct professor at Seton Hall University and at Holy Apostles, where she also serves as Alumni Association president. Dr. Trasancos, thanks for being with us today on Catholic Answers Live.
Hello, thank you, Cy. Thank you for having me back on.
And it's maybe you're making a Lenten type sacrifice today, because I know you just moved from the Adirondack Mountains in New York to the plains of Texas.
Yes, we just moved. Literally, the movers left our house about an hour ago to dump off our stuff that they loaded last week. So it's been an interesting couple of weeks.
Well, thanks for doing this with us. We really do appreciate it. You wrote some interesting things recently for Catholic Answers, for the online magazine, about evolution and faith, about these ideas of polygenism and what's the other one? Polygenism, monogenism?
Monogenism.
Oh, yeah. So I thought that it's just fascinating to read what you have to write. I wanted to share that with our listeners and allow people to ask questions about that. Can you give us just a general outline of what you were saying in those pieces on the Catholic Answers website, Catholic.com?
Sure. So the question always comes up when I take it from the point of view as a mother and an educator, but children who learn about Adam and Eve and original sin and the fall in their catechism classes, when they get to biology classes, even in high school, they learn about human evolution and how the human race evolved from many different lines. And so polygenism is the view that different races of humans evolved independently of one another. You know, we had all of the pre-humans, the Neanderthals, and et cetera. And that is very confusing. That directly contradicts the literal interpretation of the creation of Adam and Eve, a monogenetic pair, single pair of ancestors. So you have on one hand polygenism, which is supported by science, but it's in direct contradiction with an Adam and an Eve in the Garden of Eden. And you have monogenism, which has absolutely no scientific support, but that's what we teach our children. And so it's science or theology. What do you say to kids? And you know, my main concern is not to solve this question, because that's not my job and it's not solvable right now. It's something that the Pontifical Academy of the Sciences takes very seriously, and there are scholars who research it and write on it, and there's scholarship for hundreds of years probably to come on understanding this question. But what do you say to kids when they have that question? What do you say? Is it science or theology? Because that is one of the cruxes where kids turn away from their faith. It's like Adam and Eve, that's like Santa Claus or something, or you didn't tell me the truth, and they reject faith because of it. So I think we need to have answers now, at least some way to talk to people, not just children, but anybody who's confused about those two things. And they're not completely reconcilable, but the reason is that we don't know everything. Science points to many lineages rising or evolving, but it would do that because those are the theories and that's how it goes. And it's not like you have to pick one or the other. The more mature answer that we should be telling our children is that you have to dive into the mystery. You have to understand that we're not going to know everything, and that it doesn't mean we're going to have the absolute answer right now and we'll understand how all of this fits together. We can still believe that it fits together and accept that we just don't have all the answers yet.
That's a hard. It's for some reason that's a hard answer for people to accept. I actually, in reading the pieces, was struggling with it myself a little bit. The ultimate conclusion that you come to is we're far from a place of understanding human origins enough to fully explain how Genesis and the work, the scientific findings go together. So there's a kind of faith side of it that we have, which says indeed they do go together. I mean, there's not two truths. There's not like a scientific truth and a religious truth. Truth is truth. They do go together. We don't know how they go together.
Right. And so you have a choice. So it is very uncomfortable. And I know exactly what you're talking about, because I think when people say, oh, don't worry about it, this shouldn't bother you, the church accepts evolution. Well, no, there is a real uncomfortableness in thinking that, the human race evolved from ape-like ancestors. And it gets really uncomfortable because it's really disturbing. Like, I was so comfortable with Adam and Eve. Now what do I make of all of this? If you look at the Smithsonian Institute website, it has human origins, and you see this family tree of humans with all these other species of pre-humans. And what do you do with all of that? Well, you can either say, I'm going to pick one or the other and be happy and comfortable and go on my way picking one or the other. But these are two enormous things to pick between, science or theology. You don't want to pick between those two things. The better answer is to say, okay, I have to come to terms with the fact that we don't understand everything, but the church doesn't pick one or the other. The church dives into both. The church is wide open listening to anthropologists and what they have to say. Why do they do that? They do it because the more we understand about evolutionary science and what it tells us about human origins, about how we learn to speak, and about how that when intellectual activity started showing up in the fossil record, and the more we learn about that, the more we learn about ourselves. And so it should be the kind of view where we say, I want to learn everything I can. I want to learn more about what Catholic teaching says. I want to learn more about what scholars, Catholic theologians and philosophers have done, and I want to know what the scientists are discovering. And I'm not afraid to learn any of that. I want to know what they're saying. And if you kind of free yourself from saying, I have to have that one final right answer, if you just let yourself free of that and understand that you may not, it's okay. And I remind people, and I remind myself too, we don't know exactly what happens at the chemical reaction level, molecule for molecule, when any of our lives began as a fertilized ovum. We don't understand exactly what happened when all of our lives started. So there simply are some things that are just beyond our grasp to understand.
Well, before we go to the first break, I just want to I was maybe at a younger time fretting over these things with a friend of mine who's a theologian. His name is Drew, and he said to me, he said, Cy, you're trying to, there's two things that you don't understand. One is nature and one is God, and you're trying to figure out how they interact. And from a position of not understanding either one of them, you have a tiny little bit of knowledge about each of them. And I was very humbling when he said that. Does that strike you as fundamentally true?
The way I look at it is that there's not either nature or God, that nature is creation. Yeah. Nature is what God created. And so the more you understand about science, then what you're really doing is understanding more about how God created things to work.
All right.
Did that answer you? Okay.
It did answer my question, but I think that, the creation itself, you know what, now that I think about it, he might have used the word creation. You're trying to understand creation and the creator, and you don't understand either. And what you want is an answer of, oh yeah, how do they go together? And,
right.
And there's a sense of, at a certain point, you have to have some humility. I want to talk about that idea of humility a little bit, and humility not just for religious people, but for people who are devoted to science. When we come back, we'll take a quick break, and we'll do that, and we'll take some calls on evolution and Genesis with Dr. Stacy Trasancos when we come back on Catholic Answers Live.
This is Harry Connick Jr., and you're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Author Mike Aquilina says, to read The Apostasy That Wasn't is to live in the 4th century for a vivid moment. Knowing the thrills and heroics to which true faith led our ancestors, this is the most enthralling book you will read this year. Order your copy of The Apostasy That Wasn't today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
St. John Paul II stated that, for the disciple of Christ, evangelization is a duty, an obligation of love, and the Catechism of the Catholic Church states that evangelization is necessary for salvation.
So we know we're called, but how do we do it?
St. Paul Street Evangelization can help. To learn more, contact us at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
The Catholic Answers Minute. I'm Father Vincent Serpent. In John 21, Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, James, and John were fishing in the Sea of Tiberias. When they saw Jesus standing on the shore, he told them to cast their nets over the right side of the boat. They did, and were not able to pull the net in because of the great number of fish. Immediately they recognized him. He already had roasted some fish, and they had breakfast with him. The meal was joy-filled because they knew him and had spent so many hours with him. He had become the center of their existence. So being united with him again filled them with such delight. Do you see any parallels here? Do you see where I'm going with this? To the extent that we center our lives around him, to that degree will we ever be able to delight in his presence in a union that will never end. I'm Father Vincent Serpo for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Call now with your question, 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We're talking science and religion, and specifically evolution and Genesis. Tough problem there. I don't think we do ourselves any favors by underestimating it. We can oversimplify it. And as Dr. Trasancos was saying, Dr. Stacy Trasancos is our guest. We can put ourselves in the position of choosing one or the other, but none of those seem as satisfying as saying we just don't fully understand. 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. And Dr. Trasancos calls, our lines are filling up, and I want to get to them, but I have a question for you about sometimes I see this, it's constantly playing out this kind of pretense of there's a struggle between science and religion and all that. And I'll watch the science channels or something like that. And they will, if they're going to do an origins of life thing, they always end up with some pool of mucky looking water somewhere, it looks like it's very ancient. And they'll say, this somewhere in a little wet space life came together, and then they just go on. And I think they don't know that. They don't like that. That's not a fact. No one knows how life began. And I'm not trying to say that I know better than they know. I'm just saying, isn't there a call for some humility on both sides here?
There is, and what you see in TV like that, it's really not, in my opinion, in my experience, it's not actually what is in textbooks, and it's not actually the way scientists think about it.
Yeah.
When I was writing my book, I looked it up, and I don't have my books handy because they're all packed, but when you look in college level, high school level, whatever, if you look in the biology or the biochemistry textbooks, and you go to the chapter on the beginning of life, every single one of them, because I looked and I checked, every single one of them says we do not know and we will never know exactly how life began. So the humility is there. And I point that out to people. I'm like, they don't know, and it's okay. It's okay, but they're going to figure out what they can know. And the best theories do have life arising that way, like chemicals coming together and organizing. It's all about the organization to be able to carry on the functions of life. So that's why you see that on TV, because the theories say that right now. But the textbooks also say we don't know.
Okay. Are you ready to go to calls? Do you feel like going to calls?
Okay.
888-318-7884 is the number. If you would like to get on the line, we go now to Anonymous in Northern Virginia. Anonymous, you are on with Dr. Stacy Trasenkos. What's your question?
Hi, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to ask this question. I'm calling in because I recently heard yesterday or a few days ago, Mother Angelic on EWTN was talking about something, but she made a statement, from what I understood, saying that the Roman martyrology says that, allegedly says that the world is not millions of years old, but it's thousands of years old. And so that, that kind of got me thinking, wait, what? Because, growing up, with modern science curriculums and everything, we're told that, the earth is millions of years old, and, humanity itself has, records of existing much more than just a couple thousand years ago. So I guess, and then I, looked in more, and there's like this very big battle between young earth creationism and old earth creationism. And I guess my question is, as a Catholic, is there a specific stance? Are we obligated to specifically believe in young earth versus old earth, despite what, modern science may claim? Or is that, are we morally obligated, or is that very much like in the air? Like, what's your take on that?
Well, what the church says is that the church does not bind us to believe either one. If you want to believe the earth is young, you're free to. If you want to believe the earth is older, you're free to. We're free to interpret the science. Then saying, so you're not bound to, the church doesn't take a position on that. However, there's overwhelming evidence in scientific literature and scientific studies now that the earth is much older than that. The Roman martyrology was the eulogies of the saints and blessed approved by the Sacred Congregation of Rites up to 1961. So at that time, I don't think so much has been discovered since then. And what we have today, we believe that the earth is 4.5 billion years old based on radiometric dating from meteorite material and radiometric ages of the oldest known fossils. So, or terrestrial and lunar samples, I'm reading. So, we have this body of scientific evidence today that strongly suggests, like, to say that it's not that old, it messes up a whole house of cards of how things are structured. And that's what you do in science. You piece together the theories. It's not that they have some predetermined conclusion. You just fit everything together. And that probably was not as well understood in the early 1960s.
Anonymous, does that address the question that you had about whether you have a moral obligation to believe one way or the other?
It does for the most part. The one question I would ask is that, if I remember correctly, I believe I saw that it says somewhere in the Roman Martyrology, I was looking at an online version of it, an online sample of it. I remember seeing that there is a sign of imprimatur and nihil obstat. And I guess that's where my question of, oh, wait, do we have a moral obligation to believe this? Because even though I know that the Roman, or at least I've understood, that the Roman martyrology is not necessarily church doctrine, the fact that it has those signs of saying that it doesn't contradict anything that the church teaches kind of raised an eyebrow for me on, wait, okay. Do we have? But does that mean that,
Yeah. We don't have a moral obligation to believe one or the other. I think it's, you have a moral obligation, I would say, to seek the truth. And oftentimes seeking the truth means you have to be willing to dig up information and learn and withhold making an opinion until you have learned.
Thank you very much, Anonymous, for that call. We are getting a lot of calls, Dr. Trasenkos, so I'll just move through them relatively quickly. Let's go to Jenny in Walla Walla, Washington, listening on KHFS. Jenny, your question for Dr. Stacy Trasenkos.
Hi, Doctor. So my question is, in Genesis and Exodus, and they mention certain people living to be, 400 years old, 600 years old. And so my question is that real age? Is that just their calendars are different than ours? I don't know. It just seems really odd to me.
I actually don't really know the answer to that very well. I think Jimmy Akin is the one to talk to on that. I I'm not sure how to answer your question. I don't want to make anything up, but my interpretation just right now would be that it's possible people lived that long. It's possible that they counted the days differently. I'm not sure which one.
May I offer one other that I have heard, which is that in the ancient way of telling history, they often used images instead of precise numbers and that kind of thing. And so when they say someone is 700 years old, it means super abundantly blessed. That's that person that's a way of saying that person has great favor with God. So because age is considered a sign, an image of having been blessed. Does any of that help
sense.
you, Jenny?
Yeah, that does. It really does. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Again, moving quickly through these calls, if we can, we go now to John in Los Angeles, listening on Immaculate Heart Radio. John, you are on with Dr. Trasancos.
Hello, doctor. How are you doing?
Hi, John.
Hello. I'm trying to understand exactly your position, I guess, because you say that, can the two be reconciled? And then you say, well, we don't know if they can, but we just on faith as a believer in the Bible, we're just going to believe on faith that they must reconcile. But the only reason you're saying that is because the science is trying to show you that the Bible and its account and what it's saying is not to be taken literally, and it's not even really to be taken seriously, honestly. It's at best a metaphor, an allegory, it's stories that people compiled and became sacred texts and became a text of a people. But that's the whole issue, that it can't be reconciled because, and you have to begin at the very beginning when it says, that's the great thing about it, is that at the very beginning of the book, it gives you a reason to question. And then once you have a question, then you get into the rest of the book. And just like what you did right now, the host, I'm sorry I forget your name, but you gave a third option for the interpretation of what 700 years old could be. You first, the doctor said, well, it could be that they counted the days different, or it could be that, hey, people just lived that long, it was just different back then. And then you said, or, I've also heard that it could be, that just means they were extremely blessed. Well, if we can do that with just something as simple as that, then how do we not take even the idea and the story of Jesus being on the cross and say, maybe it really wasn't actually a person who died on the cross, and maybe he really wasn't actually God, and maybe he really wasn't actually, these are just things people said. So you do, and you get into Judges 21. I just recommend anybody just to go read the chapter of Judges 21 and just ask yourself, should we really be taking this book seriously? And why not all the other books of sacred people's texts? And why have we chosen this one and created?
Okay,
you'll learn that it's because
John, you got to let us give a chance to respond. And because I gave an answer there, I'm going to respond as well as Dr. Trasancos. But we're up against the break, so you got to hold on for a quick minute because there are answers to all those questions, John. I hope you will hold on, and we can discuss them when we come back on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Glad you're with us. Join us on air with your questions today on Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, this is Trent Horn, and I'm here to tell you about the most exciting and innovative Catholic book in years. In today's world, people from countless perspectives pose challenges to our Catholic faith every day, in conversations, through the mass media, on the internet, and more on the infinite collection of social media platforms. There's no getting away from this daily onslaught. We as Catholics need to stand strong, to be prepared to mount a daily defense to respond to the many challenges that we as believers are presented with every day. To that end, my good friend and apologist extraordinaire Jimmy Akin has come up with what will surely be a great resource for years to come, a daily defense. A daily defense takes up a different challenge for every day of the year, 366 in all, teaching you how you can defend the faith and give answers to Catholics and skeptics alike. And it's user-friendly, with challenges and answers indexed alphabetically by scripture verses or by topic. So finding the answers can be quick and easy. Order your copy of A Daily Defense today by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting Catholic.com, or by asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
With his new DVD, Understanding Revelation, Decoding the Bible's Most Mysterious Book, Jimmy Akin unlocks the secrets of Revelation so that anyone can understand them. Packed with almost 2 hours of eye-opening material, it paints an entirely different picture of the book of Revelation than the one most people already have. The book of Revelation was meant to reveal God's message to his church. And in Understanding Revelation, Jimmy Akin shows you how it does exactly that. Order your copy of Understanding Revelation today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, taking on the tough stuff today. This hour, we're discussing evolution and the book of Genesis. Next hour, pornography and the fantastic new book from Matt Fradd, The Porn Myth, exposing the reality behind the fantasy of pornography. Tough stuff to tackle on a Friday, but important stuff as well. John in Los Angeles is with us listening on Immaculate Heart Radio. And John, I just want to address one thing because I said something, and usually I don't interject, but I had said that that's a way that you can understand that. The way that we as Catholics, or among the ways that we as Catholics interpret Scripture, is to find out what the author intended. And so it's clear that the authors of the Gospels intended to tell us literal historical truth. When they say Jesus was about 30, they mean Jesus was about 30. It is not clear that that's what the authors of Genesis intended. But it's perfectly fine to read it, if you would like, as literal history, but it's also true that in the ancient world, history was told in a different way. So they would use images, like a person living to 700 years, to talk about how blessed that person is. That's the way that we respect each book of the Bible on its own terms. But it is the case that the Gospels are telling us history in a way that not all the books of the Bible are, like the Song of Songs, for example, or the books of Proverbs. You have to understand those differently. And Dr. Trasenkos, I will let you address the rest of it.
Yeah, one thing I always say, when it comes to interpreting Genesis literally, I don't think anyone absolutely interprets Genesis literally. I mean, that's the thing about our human language. In chapter 3, when it says that Adam and Eve's eyes were opened when they ate the fruit and they saw their nakedness, no one interprets Genesis to mean that they walked around with their eyes shut and that the immediate consequence of original sin was merely to alter the position of 4 eyelids. Like, nobody interprets it that strictly literally. So we don't interpret it literally completely, and there is a lot of metaphor. The work, though, because there's no simple answers here, the work is to think with the church. The work is to read the writings of the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, and read Pope Francis's writings, read Pope Benedict XVI's writings, read Pope John Paul II's writings, read what they were writing about Genesis and human evolution, and see how they were working through it, because it is difficult to get through. But those questions you're asking have been asked, and people have thought about them. And there's a difference in what was divinely revealed and that is historical, like with Christ. The church would not deny that. The church cannot deny that, that Christ was resurrected. But there is no certain dogma on, and no divine revelation that absolutely says this is how the first man and woman were created. So that there's a difference there.
John?
Okay. Quick question though, just what's the line of, I guess the correct term, demarcation that you put one on one side and the other on the other side? Whereas, because I know that we're only speaking today specifically about creation, Genesis, evolution, but my point is saying that the reason why that's almost the most important thing is because it's like you're not going to get into a business relationship or a marriage relationship if the first date is going wrong. If the first business meeting goes wrong, you're probably not going to continue. So this is the first thing that we have to deal with. And I'm saying you can say now, because like you said, the church fathers, the church historians, whatever, they have been working through this. And all that tells me as a thinking person is, okay, you have 2 different stories. And so for centuries, people have been, and the smartest people on the earth have been trying to theologically, philosophically, even scientifically interpret it in ways to reconcile them both, only because they are being presented with a opposing truth or an opposing position that goes against what they say is the truth. And so my only point is just, at what point do we really believe that Job was really a man who really all those things happened to him and God really had that conversation with the devil, or do we not? Do we really believe Jonah was in the whale, or do we not? You know, and the fact that you say that Jesus was real, because like, how do you, what gives you the confidence, I guess, to say, well, okay, what's in the Old Testament was just metaphor and parable, and why not? What's so different about the gospel?
Yep.
Okay, let's let Dr. Trasenkos answer it. Doctor.
I have been exactly where you are, because I'm a convert, and I did for a while question everything I thought I knew about science and evolution and understood, because I was comfortable with evolution when I converted, and then I thought, wait a minute, did I just miss the whole boat here? So I've been where you are, and what helped me was I started studying dogmatic theology, and I came to understand there are certain dogmatic truths, de fide doctrine, that the Catholic Church defines and articulates very, very carefully. It's in the writings, and it's referenced to other church writings throughout history. There are things that are carefully articulated, like that man is composed of body and soul, and that God created everything. And so we can never deny those things, because if you deny one of those, it's a logical hierarchy. You start denying other things. But this isn't one of them, how Adam and Eve were created. And also, we don't read the Bible at the very beginning to the very end. That's the wonderful thing about Scripture, is that it's living. We read the old in the light of the new, and the new in the light of the old. We read the Bible as a systematic whole. And so we don't start at the very beginning and say, well, if I can't believe that, then I can't believe something else. We try to look at how it all fits together. And when you add science into that mix, it's still the same very difficult mental exercise of trying to understand how it all fits together.
Thank you very much for that call, John. Very, very helpful. We go now to, just trying to get to as many calls as I can today. We go now to Jeff in Fairport, Colorado, listening on AM 1060. Jeff, you are on with Dr. Stacy Trasenkos.
Thank you. I want to start with the idea that there are responsible scientists who read Genesis all the way through, literally, and including a creation of Adam and And that happens because how you read the radiological data depends on your assumptions and on which radiological data you use.
Okay, Jeff.
I had the doctor.
Do you want to put that into a question for Dr. Trasenkos?
Well, the question I had for the doctor was what she thinks about mitochondrial Eve.
Okay.
Okay. There is, it was based on a worldwide survey of human mitochondrial DNA using genetic molecular clocks, which is not radiometric dating. It's using the genetic information to measure how fast mutations occur over time. And it was shown that all the mitochondrial DNA stem from one woman, and they call her mitochondrial Eve. She is believed to have lived about 200,000 years ago in Africa. Similar studies have found a Y chromosome Adam that says there's a link to one man that it changes, but they believe he lived about the same time, but not in the same place. These results, they're on one hand, they're striking because we don't get that in any other species. Scientists don't find that kind of link to one man and one woman in the genetic molecular clocks. On the other hand, it doesn't point to a monogenetic first pair of ancestors either. But it wouldn't, because like you say, those are the theories, and the scientists don't look for a monogenetic pair of first humans because no species has ever been known to appear that way. So scientists don't do that because it's never been observed. There's never been a species that just appeared with two people or two beings. So So I think on one hand, the mitochondrial DNA, the mitochondrial Eve, and the Y chromosome Adam, I think those are remarkable findings in the scientific literature. And even though they don't point to a first man and a first woman, and absolutely they point to a population, they point to a very small population. And those things are consistent and in line with maybe there was a very, very, very small first population, or even just two. They're consistent with that. But you have to remember, evolutionary science will never, ever, ever get us to a first man and a first woman. It can't, because there's no reason to have a scientific theory based on something that's never been observed in science before.
Jeff?
Right. So because it doesn't happen, it didn't happen. And they won't accept the scripture as a reasonable source of information.
Okay.
And they will explain away when they have a people.
Jeff, we're only getting about every other word now. I just want to go to Dr. Trasancos with because it doesn't happen, it didn't happen. That's not what you said.
No, and here's the thing. Do we believe in miracles or not? We do. And I'm not saying this is what happened. I'm not saying I even believe this, but I've asked a number of priests, I'm like, what do you think about this? And the priests say, and this is where I come out too, I'm not ready to deny that there was an Adam and an Eve. And I'm not ready to deny that either. And, it could have happened. This is a fact. It's possible that there was a miracle. But we would be silly to expect science to find that for us, because it can't. Evolutionary science is not going to find something like that. But it's possible there was a miracle. That's entirely different from saying there absolutely was a miracle, because we don't know that either. But it's possible. And so, you're just left, where I said before, you're left learning about what's being discovered and seeing how it all fits together.
But there's lots of the world that science can't ever. I mean, I could say, I truly believe that Jesus multiplied the loaves and fishes. Literally, truly believe. But there's no science that can ever prove that happened. It's not within the purview of science.
Science can't prove that the bread and wine become the body and blood in every mass either.
Yeah.
But we look at it and we believe it.
Amen to that, sister. More on evolution and Genesis with Dr. Stacy Trasancos when we come back right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
Our society is suffering from a pandemic of sexual sin. It's everywhere, and the internet has only made it worse, with porn sites pulling in more traffic than Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter combined. This plague is hitting vulnerable young people especially hard, setting them up for a lifetime of misery and endangering their very souls. At Catholic Answers, we're always looking for new ways to help young people. Recently, I, Carlo Broussard, challenged Jimmy Akin how he would convince young people that they needed to be chaste. Jimmy started speaking, and 1 hour later, I was left in awe. I couldn't believe what Jimmy presented on the fly. All I could say when he finished was, "Wow, I wish I'd recorded that." So that's what Catholic Answers has done. Jimmy's just come out with a new DVD called Understanding Chastity, so you can hear the same powerful case he made for me. It'll equip you to talk about God's design for sex in a way that's easy to understand, clear, and persuasive. Best of all, it's the kind of presentation you can sit down and watch with young people, or simply let them watch it on their own. And it's ideal for use with parish youth and young adult ministries. To make your donation and get a free copy of Understanding Chastity, visit Catholic.com and click the Understanding Chastity banner, or call us toll-free at 888-291-8000. That's the Understanding Chastity banner at Catholic.com, or call toll-free 888-291-8000.
Catholic Answers Live comes to EWTN Television.
Hi, this is Cy Kellett. Join me for a show dedicated to Catholic apologetics and evangelization, as we connect viewers to prominent leaders in the church today and touch on just about everything relating to the church, from doctrinal issues to family concerns, social issues, evangelization, ethics, you name it.
Catholic Answers Live TV, Saturday, 10 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Television.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. The TV show starts this Saturday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And guess who's in it, Dr. Stacy Trasancos? Go ahead, try to guess.
Is it me?
Yes, you are. Yeah, and that's why.
Yes. Okay.
Did you know that? Did I already tell you that? Yeah, I think I told you at some point.
I did, and my first thought was, I am so glad I took a minute to clean up the schoolroom that day because I had no idea it was going to be.
I know.
I tidied it all up so it would be nice and neat.
Yeah, your house, not the house you live in now, but it looked better than our studio. We were looking at that, going, well, maybe that's how we should have set the studio, with a little fire going in the back and all that. So,
Yeah.
So you can see Dr. Trasancos and a whole bunch of the apologists here, and Rose Sweet, who was here earlier in the week, all in the first episode of Catholic Answers, the best of Catholic Answers Live on EWTN, starting at 10 p.m. Saturday night. And it will replay again the following Tuesday. And maybe somebody could type in when the time is, because now that I'm saying it, I forgot. They'll give it to me in a minute, and I'll tell you the time on Tuesday that it's going to play. Right now, we're talking about evolution and Genesis with Dr. Trasancos, and we go now to Tony in Dallas, Texas, listening on Guadalupe Radio. Tony, you are on with Dr. Trasancos. What's your question?
Dr. Stacy, it's an honor to speak with you. Thank you all for taking my call. I just wanted to make a comment about, what was said earlier. First of all, I want to say on the side, I believe that if the scripture said that Job went through all that, he did. If the scripture said that Jonah was swallowed by technically a big fish and not a whale, that's what happened. But with that said, I'm a proponent of the young earth idea. And, whenever we talk about what scientists have discovered with respect to this and that and the other, we have to ask ourselves, who are these scientists and how important is God in their life? Because there's an old saying, what's in the heart will be in the art. So I just wanted to point that. I mean, when we say, well, scientists discovered this or scientists discovered that, well, I'd like to know who. And I want to know, how important really was God in their life, and to know that the one that controls the science and all of its characteristics is ultimately God.
Dr. Trasancos.
Well, it sounds kind of like you're saying that unless a scientist concludes that Genesis must be literally interpreted, that scientist doesn't have a close relationship with Christ. And I don't think we should ever say that. We just can't be saying things like that. So, but to name names, there are plenty of scientists who do look at it. They just don't look at it the same way as young earth creationists. They don't think that, they look at the data and they say, okay, let's roll up our sleeves and figure out what happened. They don't just stop themselves and say, I can't even go there. In a way, and I'm not saying this to be critical, the way I view it though, they have a faith in a bigger God. Like, they understand how big God is, or they don't understand, but they're open to him being bigger and capable of more than we ever imagined. And I've felt that way before myself. I mean, when you study the periodic table and you study what atoms are, and you think about how there are atoms in your body and all around you right now doing their thing at such precise levels, there are atoms just interacting with each other and bonding with each other, and reactions going this way and going that way, and all balanced and controlled. It's like, it's even overwhelming when you realize God did all of this. And if you don't know that science at that level, then you don't get that experience of, wow, I had no idea it was this fast. And I think the scientists who look at evolution and study it, I think that's the kind of experience they have. I don't think it's that they're just trying not to believe what the Bible says. I think it's the other. I think they're wide open, and they're trying to understand how God created the world.
It's God the one that controls it all.
Yeah. God holds everything in existence.
There's no conclusion. What you said about the atoms is dead on correct. That's fine. But there's no conclusion that they can come to that can ever be apart from ultimately something that God ordained in some way, shape, or form. Via Scripture, and primarily via Scripture. So, you have to, it comes back to what's really in heart. What's in their heart will be reflected in their art when push comes to shove.
Right, but do you think that Adam and Eve walked around with their eyes closed until their eyes were opened?
No. I mean, when it comes to that, yes, you can use some figurative. But my point is that you got to be. I want to err on the side of caution when it comes to the figurative, and not on the side of, oh well, let's just start seeing how many more things we can take figuratively as opposed to literally. That's my point. I want to err on the side of caution.
I respect that. And I would just say that maybe read what they write, read what they discover, read the scientific literature, and try to see what it is they're saying. Have you ever heard of Lucy? So Dr. Yves Coppens, he's an anthropologist, the team that discovered the Australopithecus afarensis, the one known as Lucy, the short ape looking fossils. He's actually an ordinary member of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, and he gives talks there, and he talks to them. And I don't think he's Catholic. I'm not going to absolutely say he's not, but I don't think he's Catholic. But they do invite people, scientists who are not Catholic, to be members of the Academy because they want to hear what they have to say. They want to hear what these scientists have discovered about what it means to be human, and they want to consider what they're saying. They're not going to totally buy into everything. Like, we're never going to deny that we're composed of body and soul, and we're never going to deny the absolute truths of the Catholic faith. But on the other hand, it's also okay to hear what the scientists are saying. But it's okay to err on the side of caution too.
Thank you very much. I continue to move on just so that we can get as many in as we can today. 888-318-7884 is the number. And Dr. Trasenko's folks are watching us on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and Periscope. Hello to all of you. And then we take questions there that are typed in when we can. And since Pete on Facebook Live it took up one of my favorite topics that we never get to talk about on Catholic Answers, I thought I'd take his question. Where do dinosaurs fit in creation?
Okay, are you ready for me? Okay, so he's not going to talk. Okay.
No, I just, he typed it in, but I picked it because it had dinosaurs in it.
Yeah, like what do you tell kids when they say Adam and Eve and what happened with dinosaurs? Well, with my own children, I take that as an opportunity to start talking about how, you learned about Adam and Eve, but now there's a lot more that we have to talk about. I take that as an opportunity to explain to them about evolution, and here is what the scientists have found. And yeah, when you look at all this stuff, it certainly seems like there were dinosaurs, and they lived a long time ago, and there were things that evolved up to them and things that evolved after them. And so there were dinosaurs. And so then, all my kids have said, were there dinosaurs in the Garden of Eden? And my answer to that is, we don't know. We don't know. And, that's really not the way to look at it. Let's look at what we've discovered in the fossils, and let's learn about this. And, then when you get into the other questions about was there death before Adam and Eve, there are some more theologically nuanced answers that you can show them how theologians have said that the death that came in with first sin was death of man. It didn't apply to all the other animals who naturally died anyway. Like plants didn't live forever and animals didn't live forever. And it opens up a big conversation with your children to start talking about this stuff. But did that answer your questions? How do they fit in?
That's it. We don't get to ask them. You mean me or the person? Because I'm going to say yes. That answered the question.
Yeah, to Pete.
Yeah, to Pete. That answered Pete's question. I wanted to, because I know this is a very sensitive topic, but and I'm going to take more calls, but I want to ask you a question. As a Catholic yourself, you believe that the book of Genesis is God's word? Yes or no?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, you thought there was more question coming to that. Yeah. So, because I think that I don't want to it's because we have to make these very fine distinctions. It's important to make the gross assertions too sometimes. And one of them is, yes, that's the word of God.
It's the word of God. I believe it's the Word of God. I understand that there were authors, and I understand that they were writing to the people in their time. And, maybe I'm just kind of going out into speculation too much here, but I always kind of looked at that as just a testimony to how sophisticated human language is. Like, how often when we talk to each other, even in our relationships, I say one thing and I mean it literally. My husband hears something else and he takes it literally. And there's often just a conversation. It's like, does he believe in the word of his wife? Does he believe what I'm saying? Yes. Does he understand everything I'm saying? He'll say no, not if I'm in the room. But when I read Genesis, it's like, okay, somebody wrote this. Somebody wrote it, and it was inspired by God, and it has information in it that God wants us to know. And the real point of Genesis is not, God didn't write down Genesis, or God didn't give the message for Genesis so that we would know every biological detail of human origins. I personally think that was probably hidden from us on purpose, because it is hidden from us, and there is no way we will ever know exactly how either life or humans first emerged. We will not know that. It is hidden. That's a fact. But I think the real point of Genesis is not to ever get too caught up on the past and going, how did we evolve? How did we get here? The point of Genesis is to look forward, to say, how do we get to heaven? What does all of this mean? God created this earth for us to live in and for us to take care of and for us to appreciate. But you can gain the whole world at the expense of your soul. The point of it is to realize that God created us and loves us and wants us to be with him in heaven. So I always, even when I get bothered by those questions, I try to look forward when I'm done with it.
And one of the things we can miss is how radical the book of Genesis was in the ancient world. There's no other book like it, to say God made it, that it's good, and he keeps saying over and over and over again that it's good.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, I said I was going to go back to calls, but now I hear the music, so I'm not going back to calls.
Okay.
But I am so grateful for you taking the time. I'm sorry we had to disturb you on moving day. I know you have to get back to that moving and cleaning now. Take your PhD and go put some stuff on shelves.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
And you'll come back again?
Yes, definitely.
We'll try to get you on an easier day.
If you'll have me.
Of course we will. Next hour, Matt Fradd. We're going to talk a bit about pornography for an hour. It's a very important topic, and Matt always has interesting and maybe even surprising things to say about that. Again, Dr. Stacey Trasenkos, thanks for being with us. We'll be back for our second hour of Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
It's all around us. We are a society awash in hypersexual imagery, and some of it going so far as to be pornographic. As a matter of fact, a lot of it. And so you end up having to talk with your kids about it. You have to deal with it yourself in your marriage. You want some help? Maybe working through trouble with pornography, maybe talking with your children about it. Maybe what am I supposed to say in this environment? That's what this hour is about, second hour of Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. The number, if you have questions, comments, concerns in the area of pornography, and particularly I think we will call the porn myth, 888-318-7884 is the number. That's 888-31-TRUTH. And our guest this hour is the author of a #1 best-selling book. Well, it's on Amazon at the moment. It currently is and has been for weeks. The Porn Myth: Exposing the Reality Behind the Fantasy of Pornography. Matt Fradd. Matt is the Director of Content Development for Integrity Restored, and he is, in addition to being a best-selling author, a popular speaker, and he's the co-creator of Victory, an app that provides a strategic battle plan for winning the struggle against pornography. He lives in Georgia with his wife Cameron and their children. Matt Fradd, thank you very much for being with us on Catholic Answers Live.
Thank you, Cy. It's great to be with you for the first time.
I know. It's I'm very happy to get to actually speak with you. The book is fantastic. And
now, do you really mean that, or did you just glance at it 5 seconds before we went on?
I've never seen this book before. They just put this thing in my hands.
They were like, was amazing. Couldn't put it down.
Here's what you have to say about it. This book is fantastic. That's not really true. I was impressed with the myths, like you called it the porn myth, but I didn't realize that when I got into it, it would be, each chapter would say a sentence that you have actually heard these sentences said about pornography. Right. And then you debunk them and debunk them and then help us to kind of work through them. Some of these, like I remember one, I can't find the chapter now. It was about how, pornography will help cut down on rape and sexual abuse. Like, people say that. Mm-hmm. And then your chapter is fantastic. Well, that's what they told me to say. In any case.
Well, thank you very much
for saying what they told me to say.
I appreciate them, and I appreciate whoever gave you those lines to say. Really nice.
Well, what gave you the idea to do this? Is it because you're just tired of hearing these, like, people will come back at you? This is, in many ways, your life's ministry.
Yeah, I guess so. Accidentally, I've been working on this book for 3 years. It's a non-religious response to pro-porn arguments, as you say. So there's no mention of sin or Christ or redemption. As vital as I think that those things are, I think just like we, living in a secular culture, need a secular response to say why abortion is bad.
Yeah.
Right? I think we can do the same thing with pornography. And over the last, 40 years, there's been a lot of research coming out of academia, sociology, neurology, psychology, that's all saying that porn is detrimental to us as individuals, to our relationships, and to society. So I wanted to kind of write a book and just stuff as much of that research that I could. So as you see, the back, there's almost 40 pages in the bibliography, and a lot of these is peer-reviewed literature, experts in the field. What are they saying? So hopefully, this will help you, listener, if you haven't really heard a good scientific or logical case against pornography, but it'll also enable you to give to friends. Because usually the first thing friends will say to us is, that's just a religious thing, which again is another myth, right?
Yeah.
That only religious people would be upset against it. So that's why I wrote it.
Right, and it's odd. Well, it strikes me as odd that there is so much, just an overwhelming wave of secular evidence that this is not good for us. It's not good for the people who are performing in it or producing it. It's not good for the people who are consuming it. It's not good for the families of people who are consuming it. And yet, it's not treated like cigarettes or something. It's treated. I don't want to talk about it.
What do you think? To be.
Oh, you think so? Oh, you think the tide is turning a little bit on that?
Yeah, just a couple of days ago, the fourth state in the U.S. Declared pornography a public health crisis, and other states, I think Virginia, said it was a public health concern or something slightly different. But so many people are beginning to talk out about this. You know, comedian Chris Rock.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know personally.
Yeah, I've met him. He's awesome.
Yeah.
About 2 nights ago, he did a stand-up routine where he courageously shared how pornography negatively impacted his life, and was part of what contributed to his marital breakdown and these sorts of things. You know, you got Terry Crews talking about it, Pamela Anderson. You know, when Pamela Anderson is talking about it, you know, something's going on.
Yeah.
James Hetfield, lead singer of Metallica, is right now narrating an anti-pornography documentary. I could go on, but it seems to me we've reached a tipping point in our culture such that every individual either has been negatively impacted by pornography or knows and loves somebody who has been.
Yeah.
And so the old worn out mantras from the porn industry about why porn is adult entertainment that can help your marital, sexual life and these sorts of things, they seem increasingly ridiculous in light of the evidence that's beginning to mount higher and higher. It took a while, didn't it, for people to begin listening to the science that said that tobacco causes cancer, that it can be addictive. Now, I'm certainly not equating the morality, obviously, of tobacco and pornography, but just the point is, it took a while for us to realize that this is bad for us. And you can go on YouTube right now and see these tobacco apologists who are paid big bucks by tobacco industries to lie in courts of law, saying, no, there's no good reason to think that it's addictive. The science is a lot more confusing than you think. And you watch it now and it seems like The Office, where no one's laughing in the background, but it feels like they should be.
Yeah.
That's what we're seeing with pornography. So I speak to about 50 to 70,000 teens and college students every year. And every school I go to, there's 2 or 3 people who tell me they're writing papers against pornography. They're speaking out about it in their community. Dude, it's exciting.
It is.
It's an exciting time to be an anti-porn speaker.
I'm very glad to hear that, because I think maybe I have a little sense of despair almost, and the despair comes, and that's really a bad position for a Christian.
No,
to come at it.
we're going to hell in a handbasket.
But-
There's no question about it. But there's just some exciting people in the basket with us.
The thing is that when you see the age of exposure to what's called hardcore pornography, it goes down and down and down. I have been reading about this, and so that it's like for some populations, it's like 8 or 9 years old, and that's so destructive. But I don't know. Maybe those people will grow up to have a sense of the destructive power of pornography, or they'll just be destroyed by it. I don't know.
I think both are happening. Both are happening right now. Time magazine just last year ran a full article on all the detrimental effects we're learning about, and the subtitle was something like why the guys who grew up with internet pornography are now the advocates for turning it off.
Good.
And often it's because they see deleterious effects in their own person, right? Like erectile dysfunction, brain fog, an inability to take interest in things they used to find interest in, these sorts of things. So a lot of these people are beginning to speak out about it. This is by no means a religious issue.
Well, I did not see this, but I believe there was a movie about a guy, like a Hollywood movie, about a guy who has used pornography for so long that he's desensitized. He can't have regular relationships. Right. Do you know the movie I'm talking about? I think
I do, but the name's escaping me.
Don Juan or no? Don John.
Yeah. Yes. I never watched it, and I wouldn't recommend people watch it because I know there's a lot of provocative material in it that could be triggering. But my understanding is while there were some negative messages, there was also some good ones. It was basically trying to have a conversation
about it. Yeah.
And I think the reason we all heard about it is because we're all ready to have this conversation.
Is this a thing, like, is a thing that's really happening in people's lives, that they're so overexposed to pornography that they're not actually interested in sexual relations with a real person?
Yeah, buckle up. Here we go. So,
have I moved into a territory that's uncomfortable?
No, not for me, dude. This is my life. But it might be for our listeners. So heads up, listeners, I'm not going to be graphic, but if you have young children in the car, now's a good time to maybe turn it down and download the episode later. But I would say, yeah, like Dr. Abraham Morgenthaler is the clinical urologist at Harvard Medical School, and he really drew a lot of attention to what he calls porn-induced erectile dysfunction. Now, Norman Doidge, who wrote the book The Brain That Changes Itself, brilliant book, published by Penguin Books, he says this really isn't erectile dysfunction so much as it is porn-induced impotency, because with erectile dysfunction, the problem is blood flow, right? But with this impotency we're referring to, the distinction he's making is the problem isn't below the belt, it's between the ears. So I've met really fit 20-year-olds, people in their mid-20s. They're not Christian, so they have no moral qualms with having sex outside of marriage, and they'll say stuff to me like, I tried to have sex with my girlfriend and I couldn't. And then this one person said, and it broke my heart, he said, you know what's sad? I know that if I was looking at that same thing on a screen, I could have.
Oh, that is heartbreaking. It's such a...
Yeah. I know some of your listeners are probably hearing me saying that I'm okay with fornication. I'm not, but this is where people are at. And for many people, this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. They're like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that looking at pictures could do this to me.
Yeah.
And now so many of these young guys, be they atheist, agnostic, Jew, Muslim, Christian, are all beginning to kind of band together on websites like nofap.com, Your Brain on Porn, Reboot Nation, just to share their stories and to get help, because the good news is the damage can be reversed.
And that's what I far from approving of a sex outside of marriage or something like that. It seems to me that you have to have a basic level of compassion. You've really hurt yourself when you've gotten to the point where you can't engage in a relationship with another person. It has to be an image.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We've fried our brain on celluloid cyberspace, and now we can't even become aroused around a real human person, and that's not good.
No. More with Matt Fradd. The Porn Myth is the book. 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-31-TRUTH. Happy to take your calls. We'll get to the calls that are waiting when we come back right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, this is Bishop James Wall from the Diocese of Gallup, New Mexico. Keep it right here on Catholic Answers Live.
We've all heard the words at the end of Mass.
Go forth and announce the gospel of the Lord.
But how exactly are you to do that? In his new book, The Old Evangelization, How to Spread the Faith Like Jesus Did, apologist Eric Sammons takes you back to the source, taking a look at what Jesus did when he preached the good news, and drawing out the lessons he taught us. All evangelization begins with a personal encounter, and so Sammons examines Jesus' most instructive gospel encounters and discovers within each a particular truth that even 2,000 years later can help us make new disciples. Evangelization is not an option, but Christ's express command. What better way to answer this call than by imitating his supreme example? Order your copy of The Old Evangelization today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their faith and values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
Where can you find the answers to hundreds of the most common questions about the Catholic faith? Catholic Answers 20 Answers series, that's where. Clear, concise, and easy to carry, the 20 Answers series from Catholic Answers Press offers hard facts, powerful arguments, and clear explanations of the most important topics facing the Church and the world, all in a compact, easy-to-read package. They're available individually at special bulk prices, or you can get a starter pack of all 20 at a very special price. And remember, you can now purchase them as ebooks for reading on your mobile devices. Call 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com today to get your copies of all the titles in this exciting new series, or ask for them at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
888-318-7884 is the number if you're watching on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, or Periscope. Hello to all of you. You can type in questions there, or you can use that same number, 888-318-7885, to make a call. We are talking with Matt Fradd, the author of a book that is, what we can say is it's a bestseller. What we can say, we hope, is that it is really making a difference in people's lives. The Porn Myth, exposing the reality behind the fantasy of pornography. And the issues are everything from like, one of them I was actually going to ask you about, but I think you went into this already about, it's just fantasy. It's not real life. I'm just looking at all the way to like myths about that performers in pornographic movies or videos or whatever, that they really enjoy this, that they really want to be doing this. And so it's like from every, well, I don't want to say from every angle but it's from any kind of myth you've got about pornography. It does seem like you've addressed it here. Matt Fradd, how do you feel about going to calls right now?
Let's do it, yeah.
All right, we have a call from Anonymous in Groton, Connecticut, watching on YouTube. Hello, Anonymous. You are on with Matt Fradd. What's your question?
Matt and Cy, thank you for taking my call.
Happy to.
Thank you for all your work with Pints of Aquinas, especially in the Integrity Restored podcast. I want to personally thank you. I was Mopedimus in your last Porn Myth book contest. I got your book, and thank you very much.
Hey, awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, good.
Okay, I was told I was allowed to ask 2 quick questions, so let me get the first one. I think I heard from you and other Catholic resources that Sexaholics Anonymous was, and its definition of sobriety is the best resource because it's generally in line with Catholic teaching. If that's not available, are others such as Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous adequate, especially since they're known as the Augustine Fellowship?
Right. So I think what I would want to say is SA, going to a Sexaholics Anonymous meeting is a great idea. And if you go to sa.org, find a meeting, they have 3 options. You can meet face-to-face, but like you say, there might not be someone in your area. So you can actually do phone meetings, which is the next best thing. Or you can take the first step and do internet meetings. So there's more options than just this one. The second one that you mentioned has a different description of sobriety, and so you might encounter people there, say in same-sex relationships and other types of relationships that you yourself might find immoral. So you would just have to be kind of okay being in the same space of other people who have different definitions when it comes to their sobriety. So I guess it would just be up to you. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. And then the second question, in the book, and earlier you referred to nofap.com, which has been a great but also secular resource. Do you have any plans to make a Catholic or Christian equivalent on Integrity Restored?
Well, right now by the way, NoFap is fantastic. My friend Alexander founded it. He's an agnostic on a good day, I think. He's a great guy. And there's about 200,000, for those who don't know, members in there, many of whom are non-religious, and it's amazing. So we started a little Facebook group. If you type Integrity Restored (men), there's around about 800 men in there talking. We also have one for women, Integrity Restored Women. What do you think? Do you think it would be a good idea? I don't want to compete, but do you think it'd be a good idea to have a subreddit group for just Catholics?
I'd certainly be more interested in having one, where you don't necessarily, kind of just what you were talking about with Sexaholics Anonymous. You don't have you don't have to worry about the other definitions. I think would certainly be useful.
I just did a video interview with a friend of mine. His name's Noah Church. Noah's a good friend. He's an atheist, okay? So we clearly have a lot of disagreements. But I think we can learn from our atheist friends. And I think they can learn from us because we're both coming at this thing from different worldviews and we focus on different things. And I think one of the ways we need to grow as Christians when it comes to this issue of sobriety is not treating it like a solely religious issue. And I think too often we have this pietistic understanding of recovery. If I just pray a rosary every day, then I won't look at pornography. But then you have like thousands of men and women doing that and they're still looking at pornography. And then maybe you'll encounter people on NoFap who are non-religious, and maybe they say some things that are vulgar or even triggering, and so for that reason you might not want to be on there. But they might also be saying other things about recovery that are very helpful. So I really do feel like we can learn from each other. But certainly if you're in a place like that where you feel the language is triggering or unhelpful, I'd say go to Integrity Restored, men, and join the Facebook group there and join the discussion.
Thank you very much, Anonymous. We go now to Dominique in South Windsor, Connecticut, listening on Sirius XM Satellite Radio. Dominique, you are on with Matt Fradd. What's your question?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Did you have a question for Matt?
Well, I have a statement and then a question.
Okay.
I'll start off with I do concur that exposure to pornography from a young age, being for me 5 up until mid-40s, was destructive. Destroyed me, destroyed my marriage, destroyed my relationship with my kids, which I'm still trying to rebuild. I guess, I just was ignoring a lot of things. Anything from that the women that are behind the scenes, as you said, on the pictures or at the strip clubs who are enjoying it, to that there's no human trafficking involved. With all that said, how do you move forward, so that you're not triggered by everything? An example would be going to a store and all of a sudden there's a Maxim magazine that, okay, while not per se porn, definitely provocative prose up, usually on the front covers.
First of all, Dominique, I just want to say God love you and bless you. Everyone listening to you, including myself and Sai, we have all done things and engaged in behaviors that we're ashamed of. And it says a lot about you that you would have the humility to recognize the ways in which you failed, right? Just like I failed, just like Sai's failed, just like everyone's failed, and then do something about it. So congratulations for having that humility. That's awesome. There are 3 things when it comes to long-term recovery that I would suggest. I mean, there's the short-term stuff, like accountability software, having an accountability partner, educating yourself about the harms of pornography, right? Those are sort of like the obvious things that you obviously should be doing, or else you have no hope. But as far as the things that bring the most long-term healing, here's the 3 things I would suggest. One would be finding a therapist. Okay, full disclosure, I just went to my first therapy session today. I've never been to therapy before. I need therapy, I think. So I went today, all right? There's no shame in wanting to be a whole man of God. There are people in our lives who need us to be that. So finding someone who is certified in sex addiction therapy, right? And one of the ways you can do that is by going to our website, integrityrestored.com, go to Getting Help, find a therapist, and then you can punch in your postal code and it'll take you to places in your area. That'd be number 1. Number 2, I would say to find a sex addiction therapist, to find an SA group in your area. I mentioned that a moment ago. So even if it's something like you haven't looked at porn in a few months, right, or 6 months, if you continually feel that tug on your heart towards pornography, that this is a daily battle, right? Addiction doesn't necessarily mean one's looking at this super regularly. It could mean that you look at it once every 6 months, but you're sort of white-knuckling it, So I'd say that'd be the second thing. And then the third thing I'd say would be finding a good spiritual director who can help you with your God image, healing the idea that God is, upset with me, that I've disappointed him, that I'm beyond forgiveness and these sorts of things. I mean, look, those 3 things take time and effort and maybe money, okay? But it works. So those are the 3 things I'd suggest. And just by the by, I don't know your story, and so forgive me if this is insensitive or if it doesn't relate to you. But if you wanted to reach out to your family and apologize to them, I'm sure you've done that already, but one way to do that might be to write a letter to each of them, because when you write a letter, no one's going to interrupt you, right? They get to read it without being defensive, as if you're in their presence speaking to them. Write them each a heartfelt letter. Write them a letter as if you were going to die tonight. What would you want to say to them? Pray for the courage to do that. Write the letter, send it to them. I'm sure you've been to confession, and then trust in the Lord's mercy. I remember having a friend of mine, I said to him, were you ever worried about screwing up your kids? And he said, no, I'd hate to deprive them of healing. So know that the Lord can heal your children.
Thank you, Dominique, for that call. Many more calls on the line to get to when we come back with Matt Fradd, the author of The Porn Myth. We are talking about just that very topic. I have to say, I don't appreciate you telling the entire world I've done things I'm ashamed of. I've been trying to hide that. That's what shame is for.
Patrick Coffin.
Oh, Patrick Coffin. Okay. We'll be right back on Catholic Answers Live. 888-318-7884 is the number. We'll see you in just a minute.
Join us on air today on Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, this is Trent Horn, and I'm here to tell you about the most exciting and innovative Catholic book in years. In today's world, people from countless perspectives pose challenges to our Catholic faith every day, in conversations, through the mass media, on the internet, and more on the infinite collection of social media platforms. There's no getting away from this daily onslaught. We as Catholics need to stand strong, to be prepared to mount a daily defense to respond to the many challenges that we as believers are presented with every day. To that end, my good friend and apologist extraordinaire Jimmy Akin has come up with what will surely be a great resource for years to come, a daily defense. A daily defense takes up a different challenge for every day of the year, 366 in all, teaching you how you can defend the faith and give answers to Catholics and skeptics alike. And it's user-friendly, with challenges and answers indexed alphabetically by scripture verses or by topic. So finding the answers can be quick and easy. Order your copy of A Daily Defense today by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting Catholic.com, or by asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
With his new DVD, Understanding Revelation, Decoding the Bible's Most Mysterious Book, Jimmy Akin unlocks the secrets of Revelation so that anyone can understand them. Packed with almost 2 hours of eye-opening material, it paints an entirely different picture of the Book of Revelation than the one most people already have. The Book of Revelation was meant to reveal God's message to His church. And in Understanding Revelation, Jimmy Akin shows you how it does exactly that. Order your copy of Understanding Revelation today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Saturday on EWTN, Call Me Catholic with Peggy Norman Dean. Peggy discusses the importance of giving back to the community with Annette Walker and Christopher Furman, recipients of the Bishop's Award for Exemplary Business Integrity in the Diocese of Orange. Call Me Catholic airs at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And right after Catholic Answers Live today, Father Spitzer's Universe. Father Robert Spitzer and Doug Keck discuss the Shroud of Turin and the historicity of Jesus' resurrection right here on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Happy to have you back with us. And since it's Friday, I do want to remember, I don't want to eat into your time, Matt Fradd, but we have a TV show now. We have a TV show. Did you know that?
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks.
I've heard you mention it.
Yeah, oh, well, it starts tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And the same people that told me to say The Porn Myth is a fantastic book told me don't forget to mention the TV show.
Okay.
But both are true. I really wanted to talk about, and I really do think it's a fantastic book. And
thanks.
And I will just say you and I were talking a little bit at the break, and that one of the things that's really important especially in I think religious media, is not to pretend like we don't have problems ourselves, not to pretend like, oh, I'm holy now because I have this microphone in front of me or something.
Yeah.
And people struggle. So I was teasing you about why are you telling the world that I've done shameful things in my past? But I actually admire you very much, and I admire the callers very much, and I think it's very important that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and when pretending otherwise doesn't do any of us any good. And so thank you for that, Matt Fradd. May I go to calls now?
Yes, please.
All right. I have your blessing. Okay, we go
Yeah,
to
you have it.
Mia in San Antonio, Texas, watching on YouTube. Hi, Mia. You are on with Matt Fradd. What's the question?
Hey, I admire y'all too. Okay. My question for Matt is, how would he respond to the mindset of someone who says that they're a sex-positive feminist? In other words, someone who publicly posts, whether it's online, through social media, nude, pornographic images, but for the purpose of, what they say, self-love and empowerment.
Right, great question. So I feel like whenever we enter a dialogue with someone that we disagree with or we're not sure if we agree with, the very first thing we should do is define our terms. So you might want to say, well, what do you mean by sex positive? Or what do you mean by feminist? Because perhaps her definition of feminist also aligns with yours. But really, there's nothing sex positive about pornography, like retreating to your bedroom to have an intimate encounter with your iPhone. Watching people pretending to like you. This isn't sex positive. In fact, one of the most sex positive things one can do is quit pornography. Now, you say, what do you say to somebody who posts pictures of themselves online for self-love? Well, certainly one can feel glad if people are paying one attention and saying, in one way or another, complimenting one. I mean, it's like the same. It's why we tweet. It's why we send pictures of our stupid food and coffee on Instagram. We like the attention. We like the likes. We like people saying things about us. So you wouldn't want to argue with that. You would want to say what you desire is to be seen, and that's a beautiful thing, right? Like we all desire to see and to be seen, to know and to be known. And you might say, and the reason I think that's true is that we were created in the image and likeness of God, who is love. So since we've been created in the image and likeness of love, a life without love becomes senseless. But you might challenge her and say, but I just want to suggest this to you, that what you're calling self-love is really self-exploitation, right? Feminist pornography is an oxymoron, right? Like selling, as it were, your body for people to masturbate to can only feed a system of oppression, not cure the oppression. Gail Dines is a colleague in the sense that we've spoken at different conferences together. She wrote a book called Pornland: How Porn Has Hijacked Our Sexuality. Now, from all I can tell, she's a secular Jew, and the book, I wouldn't recommend that Catholics read it. It has some graphic parts in it. But the reason I suggest it to you, Mia, is that, she is a staunch feminist, and she thinks that it seems to think the primary problem with the world is patriarchy. So it's okay, I think, to meet people where they're at. So, you might give her my book, The Porn Myth, and say, look, this is a non-religious book, and she might be open to that. But you also might consider giving her a book by Gail Dines, right? And by the way, I cite a bunch of different feminists in my book, The Porn Myth, which argue against pornography and why it's liberating to women. So those would be a couple of things I'd suggest.
Mia, how's that sound?
Perfect. Great, but one of the things that I've also noticed is that the sex positive kind of feminist approach I've heard from both men and women. Not just women, which I just thought that was interesting as well.
You mean this is quite a term, the idea of being sex positive, but you're saying that you hear sex positive feminist messages from both men and women?
Correct, yes, especially regarding porn and images online. So I will definitely read.
I can't help but take the bait here, right? Language is important, and we shouldn't let people hijack it. So I consider myself tremendously sex positive. That's why I don't masturbate to my computer, because that isn't sex, Like, the reason I'm against porn is precisely because I'm for sex. And so I would say to this person, if you're pro-science and pro-love, then there's a really good reason for you to be anti-porn.
I hear you. Great answers.
Thank you, Mia. Thanks very much for that call. Let's move to Toby in Morgantown, West Virginia, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Toby, you are on with Matt Fradd. What's your question?
Yeah, I just also wanted to make a comment that I really appreciate the work you did, Matt. I've heard you on EWTN over the years. And I appreciate the long-term perspective you gave some of the people that have called in today that, when they're trying to deal with this issue, and not lose hope and just to hang in there. Keep trying with what works. But my question was, is there a good filtering software for Apple products or iPhones? I've found in the past when I looked that most things were geared towards
Android.
Windows, and maybe they work on Android. Is there anything good for the Apple products?
So let me say a couple of things. Number one, Covenant Eyes is simply the best thing out there, right? Like, if there was a better filtering or accountability software, I would talk about it. There isn't. Now, the reason it's difficult for Apple is that Apple has a privacy policy that doesn't allow third-party apps to look into other apps. And for that reason, it's not going to, right now, filter your Instagram, your Twitter, your Google Chrome. You would have to download the Covenant Eyes browser and just use that. I know that that's changing if it hasn't changed already. So that would be what I would recommend. But here's another thing I'd recommend. I do this on my phone. I don't do it because I'm afraid I'd look at porn. I do it because I feel like I'm getting addicted to social media. I gave my phone to my wife, and I said, go into settings, and I want you to set a passcode for me that blocks the App Store. So she did that. And then I went and I deleted Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and for me, I deleted my browser. And the reason for that is, you know, I do want to have a smartphone. I want it to be able to help me navigate. I want to get my Delta tickets so I can, you know, check in easily at the airport. But I really don't need a lot of this distracting entertainment. And so for that reason, you can essentially make your smartphone a dumb phone. So that might be a good idea as well. Final thing I'd say is this. Look, every filtering and accountability software out there is going to be a pain in the butt to some degree. All right. They're really, I mean, that's right now, that's just the fact of it. And we might think, I don't want to do that. Occasionally it blocks a page I want to go to. And that can be a legitimate complaint. But we might want to ask ourselves, what would I rather? You know, would I rather the difficulty of having software that occasionally inconveniences me? Or do I want to have unbridled internet access, which I know I'm going to turn to porn on? And so sometimes we just have to, you know, choose what's a little more difficult for the sake of not falling.
Yes, that's really great information because I had already deleted the Safari browser or Wikipedia or anything that was linked to the internet, but I was wondering if I could give it to my wife and have a code where I could log into the App Store. I didn't know if there was, and I'm glad to hear that there is.
Covenant Eyes is really good. Yeah.
The Covenant Eyes, I didn't know they had their own browser. I thought it was something over top of Safari.
Nope.
That's good to know. But another thing I wanted to comment on, I had to delete a weather app yesterday because of an ad. I couldn't believe it. I've had this weather app on my phone for like 5 years, never seen anything that I can remember out of line. And an advertisement yesterday, I could not believe it. I deleted it immediately. And went back to Yahoo Weather, but didn't have any advertising as far as I can tell.
Yeah, good for you. One really quick piece of advice I'd offer to our listeners is when you encounter pornographic material or something lustful or sexually provocative, don't just pray against the temptation, pray for her or pray for him, because these are people. And so I think what we should do is like, Lord Jesus, I give you this man, I give you this woman, I ask that you would bless them, you know, whatever. Bit of advice.
Thank you very much, Toby, for that call. I have to say, Matt, the world now is biased towards people who are good with technology. Like if you're good with technology, you can make stuff work, and if you're not, you can't. And I remember when we first started getting computer connections for my kids, trying to figure out blocking software and all that. They were innocent. I didn't know what. It was really hard. It was very, very hard. You know, there's nothing, I don't even know today if I know about it. You probably know, but that can block things at the level of the, you know, because there's so many computers, phone computers and book readers and all these things in the house. I wanted something that could kind of filter things at the modem level. And
those exist. Yeah.
Do they? Because I called my cable company and they were like, "No, never heard of that before."
Disney puts out one.
Oh, they do.
So, yeah. They're good because you can make a whitelist of pages so that people can go to no other pages but the ones you set.
Yeah.
So that's great. The only problem with them, of course, is you're not really training accountability. So your son or daughter can walk down the road and access pornography from another person's Wi-Fi.
Right. So, yeah. And I kind of, because of my technical failure, I suppose, I don't know. Maybe I was a total failure at this. Maybe this is one of the things I'm ashamed of in my life.
No.
But it is the case that the technology, some people can do it. And for many people, it's hard. And so even that what you're saying right there, I think I never would have thought of that. Never.
Yeah, I would just say to people, don't be afraid to call up Covenant Eyes. Their whole customer support staff is up in Michigan, and they will sit on the phone with you until you figure it out. They're not trying to get you through like Starbucks tries to get you through when you go through their drive-through. They will sit on the phone with you, so don't be afraid. Yeah, to give them a call and ask them all the questions you think might be stupid.
Yeah, because with kids, if some children are like that, one man said 5 years old was his first exposure to pornography. If the longer you can push that off for kids,
That's right.
I think you're doing them a service. We got to take a break. We'll be right back with more Matt Fradd. Our topic, the porn myth, today on Catholic Answers Live. We'll be back with you in just a minute.
Miss a show? Make sure to catch up by downloading the podcast, available online at Catholic.com.
St. Paul's street evangelization isn't like other evangelism you might have seen on the streets. We don't yell, and we don't force anyone to pay attention to us. Instead, St. Paul's street evangelization is committed to presenting a positive, passionately Catholic presence to a world hungry for truth. For more information, or to start a chapter of your own, go to www.streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com. It's time to do our part.
Catholic Answers Live comes to EWTN Television.
Hi, this is Cy Kellett. Join me for a show dedicated to Catholic apologetics and evangelization, as we connect viewers to prominent leaders in the church today and touch on just about everything relating to the church, from doctrinal issues to family concerns, social issues, evangelization, ethics, you name it.
Catholic Answers Live TV, Saturday, 10 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Television.
The Catholic Answers Minute. I'm Father Vincent Serpa. In John 21, Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, James, and John were fishing in the Sea of Tiberias. When they saw Jesus standing on the shore, he told them to cast their nets over the right side of the boat. They did, and were not able to pull the net in because of the great number of fish. Immediately they recognized him. He already had roasted some fish, and they had breakfast with him. The meal was joy-filled because they knew him and had spent so many hours with him. He had become the center of their existence. So being united with him again filled them with such delight. Do you see any parallels here? Do you see where I'm going with this? To the extent that we center our lives around him, to that degree will we ever be able to delight in his presence in a union that will never end. I'm Father Vincent Serpa for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Call now with your question, 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back. Final segment of the week for us here at Catholic Answers Live. So Matt Fradd, try to make it good. We don't want to have
You got it.
We don't want to
screw this up.
Yeah, don't mess it up. The Porn Myth is Matt's book. The website that goes with the book, thepornmyth.com. And I know something about the porn myth that Matt won't tell you. I have a secret about it, and I know you won't say it, Matt Fradd. All the royalties from this best-selling book are going to the Children of the Immaculate Heart, which is an extraordinary ministry based here in San Diego. Grace Williams is the founder and shepherd of the whole deal, and it helps young people who have been sexually trafficked. Do I have that about right? Like that's basic.
You do, except I told you to say this on the air, so it's not a humility thing for me. I want people to know. And
I don't know what you're talking
100% of the
about.
royalties all go to this group. And it's just something me and Jesus and my wife spoke about. And I joke with my wife, if the book's really successful, maybe I'm going to regret doing this. But no, 100% of the royalties all go to help this beautiful apostolate in San Diego who helps support trafficked women. So, I push this book not for financial reasons, not that there's anything wrong with that, but just because I think it's a very good book that'll equip people, and they're also going to be supporting that apostolate. So everyone should go out right now and get it. The Porn Myth. And that would be good.
Yeah, you should.
It'd make me happy.
When the three of you were voting, how did Jesus vote on the royalties?
Jesus, I believe, told us to do it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's
To
not a voting
worrying.
situation. Amen to that.
Yeah.
But that
was beautiful.
boy, yeah, that is like one of the things Jesus says. I really believe in that.
Because
Stop
I
worrying, stop
worship
worrying.
security. So he said, well, how about we take this little idol here and let me just bang it. I'm like, okay, Jesus, thanks.
Yeah, good. Very good. Let's go to, well, I got to remember where I was. Carly in San Diego, right here in San Diego, listening on Catholic.com. You are on with Matt Fradd. What's your question, Carly?
Hey there. I just got your book and I read it. And I'm a student at JP Catholic, right? So I read your book. I loved it. And I wanted to thank you first for writing it. And it's a great apologetic work that you did. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. That's nice of you.
Yeah. My question was kind of regarding the chapter where you discussed 50 Shades of Grey and the fan fiction phenomenon. Now, like in my generation, that's like a huge, huge deal. And to me, like it seems like a really, really big problem, and not a lot of people are talking about it. And I was just kind of wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on, especially the fan fiction like phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, I think there's nothing wrong with fan fiction, but there is something wrong with pornography. So maybe we need to define our terms. And in the book, I loosely define pornography like this. Pornography is material that depicts erotic behavior, which is intended to sexually arouse. So notice that isn't naked art, right? That's not an anatomy book in your college classroom. But we should ask, well, is 50 Shades of Stupid, however poorly written, is it material that depicts erotic behavior which is intended to sexually arouse? And I think the answer is obviously yes. And so therefore, 50 Shades of Grey is pornographic. And now, does that mean that all forms of pornography are equally wicked? No, it doesn't mean that. I mean, obviously, when we think of the centerfold in the Playboy magazine, right? By the way, Playboy just brought back in nudity, so it was a great publicity stunt that they pulled a couple of years ago by removing it. All right, when we think of the centerfold, that's clearly less bad than, say, child pornography, right? So there's obviously a spectrum here, and sometimes it might be a little blurry. But less bad doesn't mean good. That would be like saying, if I smoke 1 packet of cigarettes a day, that's less bad than smoking 5 packets, therefore it's healthy. Well, no, it's not healthy. And neither is things like 50 Shades of Grey and other erotica literature, because what they do is often reinforce very similar misogynistic stereotypes. They're often created in order for people to masturbate to them, which is another irrational and sinful behavior. So my advice would be, instead of consuming poorly written erotica, open up your mind to more classical works of literature. I'm not saying things that are almost impossible to read, but you do read so you can sound smart, but just read more wholesome literature that can expand your creative palette and ability rather than truncate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carly.
Thanks very much, Carly. I know you were talking about James Joyce there.
That's right.
I know that's what that was about. Chantel in Houston, Texas, listening on 1430 AM. You are on with Matt Fradd. What's your question?
Hi. Yes. So I'm calling in regards to my boyfriend. We've been together for about 1.5 years. We met a month after he got out of the Marine Corps. But since then, he's been struggling with pornography. He said that even while he was serving in the Marine Corps, that it was actually encouraged by those in command. And so 4 years abroad and, I guess learning new things. He's just been struggling with it, and I know he's trying, and, it just seems like a constant battle. So I wanted to see if you had any advice.
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple of things I would say. One's going to sound really nice and the other's going to sound really harsh, but you take it for what it's worth. I think, first of all, we should congratulate anyone when they're humble enough to acknowledge they have a problem and need to change. We can recognize that. We can praise a person for that. So I would say that your boyfriend needs to be going maybe to a therapist, right? What is he doing to rid himself completely of this sin? It's not enough to sort of pussyfoot around with sins like this that destroy the soul and destroy marriages. And so unless you see within him this full-throated, energetic desire and pursuit of purity, then I think you should leave him. And if he is pursuing that, if he is seeing a therapist, if he is doing all the right things, and yet this is something he's still falling to on a regular basis, like let's say you were my sister, because I have no right to speak to you like this, but hey, here we go. I would say you should leave him, because someone who is immersed in pornography is incapacitated to love you. And I cannot tell you how many stories of wives who are desperately lonely and who are desperately upset, who wish they wish they knew what they know now about, say, their husbands who are addicted to pornography. And so you should realize, like that, and I know you know this, so forgive me for speaking to you if this sounds condescending. I don't mean it to be. You aren't, your boyfriend's savior. He doesn't need you to overcome this. You can point him in the right direction. You should give him my book, The Porn Myth, right? You should congratulate him where you see him striving to be pure, but it's not your responsibility to remain in a toxic relationship. I think you might even be called to leave it, because none of us are supposed to put ourselves in that sort of relationship. So please take that for what it's worth. I don't know you. I don't know your boyfriend. I don't know how involved he is with pornography. So I hope you can apply that in some way.
Definitely. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chantel, very much for that call. We go now to Rick in Dallas, Texas, listening on Guadalupe Radio. Rick, I think you've been waiting a long time. I'm sorry for that. What's your question for Matt Fradd?
I think it kind of piggybacks on the previous caller. Let's say that person eventually hits rock bottom. What do you say to somebody who's basically given up on ever getting over this?
Well, you can say that's your... it depends on the relationship. But one thing you could say is, okay, well, fine. Give up. You don't have to be free of pornography if you don't want to be. Like, you can, go rent out a cheap room, get an internet connection, look at porn for the rest of your life and masturbate to it. You can do that, right? Like, that's within your power. And you will and you could say to this person, you will very quickly discover how miserable, narrow, and uninteresting your life will become, and how wide the gates of hell are when you die. But in my experience, when you say to somebody who's lost hope, okay, fine, just look at porn then, they often kind of look up at you and say, well, no, I don't want to do that. And then sometimes I like to kind of be a little aggressive and say, well, stop your whining. Right? If you want to be free of this, there are things that you can be doing right now to be free of this. Are you seeing a therapist? Do you have accountability and filtering on your phone? Blah, 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 blah. And if they say no, then say, well, stop whining and start acting. Sometimes that tough love is necessary. Now, does that help at all, or was that way too aggressive?
No, I think you're on point. Yeah, but it's difficult. Like any addiction, it's the
right.
Like you hope for the best, but there's
isn't
always that. Well, they're going to fall back into what they're doing, and why bother?
Yeah, well, this isn't an all or nothing battle. I think we really, it isn't helpful to look at this like either I will never look at porn again, ever, or I will look at porn every day of my life. No, I'd say freedom is not so much a destination we arrive at. Freedom from porn is a daily choice we make by our actions. So if you're addicted to porn and you're trying to seek help and you've decided to stop, guess what? You will certainly have setbacks. But what's important is that we get up and look to Jesus, beg his mercy, and just keep moving forward. Because the only other option is to get sucked down the whirlpool that the porn industry wants you to be sucked down in, and that's not a happy place to go.
Rick, thank you very much for that call. I am sorry that I kept you waiting so long. I missed your call for a little bit. And Matt Fradd, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about a difficult subject with us on a Friday afternoon.
You are welcome, Cy. You're a great host. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're a great guest. Thanks for being here. The Porn Myth is the book exposing the reality behind the fantasy of pornography. All proceeds go to Children of the Immaculate Heart, a ministry to those who have been sexually trafficked. If you want to find the website, it's thepornmyth.com. Jesus Christ is the light of nations. Let's stay in that light, and we'll see you again Monday on Catholic Answers Live.